this is a timeline of how our 6 weeks of research went. I'm just going to jump right into it. The first week, we started with picking a website template, gathering various musical instrument museum websites as a point of reference for what we wanted our site to look like. We thought about understanding the range of instruments in the museum itself, and letting our grad mentor, Hannah Krall, know if there were any instruments we wanted in the museum. This is where we started to see that a lot of instruments had very similar origins, but didn't quite really get into that yet, just something that we noticed, and we, got photography equipment that we needed. Week 2 involved mapping out our website pages. We met with Dr. Astrid Juni to talk about, creating websites and digitizing humanities in general, which led to some really awesome and interesting conversations. We thought about the idea of some kind of interactive map showing all the different origins of our instruments, and trying to just be open to website features in general. There was definitely a lot of ideas that we had that, some stuck, some didn't, but overall a really cool conversation to have. Then we delegated the website parts and instrument recordings to the individuals on your teams. Next, we finalized what instruments were going to be in the museum and created a timeline for finishing them. This was definitely a really important part of the project because we had to start choosing what to keep and what not to keep, and this is when we realized a priority of ours was having diverse origins and stories. Like, as a museum goer or someone who's looking on our website, we tried to think about what you're learning by exploring all this information and just trying to create stories that seemed not all the same and just very relevant and engaging. Week 3 gathered some preliminary resources for research. In terms of tasks and errands, we had a lot of different things we were doing. We set up piano tuning with John Santoianni, finalized our museum layout. We had to determine a process for photographing instruments. Shout out to Tessa Delgo and Eric Barstow here. Eric helped a lot with setting up our photography process, and Tessa was just coming in and saying hi and vlogging everything we were doing, which I think made us feel really special and cool. Then, determining priorities on what aspects of the instruments to focus on, that guided research a lot. David was actually meant to record or digitize a lot of reel-to-reel tapes that we had. Didn't end up working out, but was something that we were starting to work on. We were finishing a lot of research. Week 4 and 5 were tons and tons of research on instrument stories. We conducted an interview with one of the piano professors here, Professor Silberger. We also took some piano recordings, which was really awesome. Then, some more photography equipment. Week 5, we were completing research. We completed 2 more interviews, one with Professor Todd and another with piano conservator Mr. Watson. A lot of uploading and completing our website, hanging the instruments on the walls as well, making the museum presentable, completing photography, which was by no means no small feat. I think we have about 121 instruments up here on the website, so that was a lot. So shout out Elaine. In week 6, we were done, and that's where we are today, so thanks.
As a musician, I was drawn to this project as I anticipated it would inform me about the different types of musical instruments, especially older instruments. What I didn't expect was how I was able to really directly interact with many fascinating instruments, such as playing on pianos from the 1800s for piano recordings and taking pictures of instruments from even the pre Columbian era. I really enjoyed learning about the backstory of how the instruments came into the museum from each of the collections while we conducted our research. And along the way, I was able to discover so many different instruments that I previously didn't even know about. I was also able to meet and connect with my amazing teammates who are so talented and bring such incredible ideas to the table when we work together. A skill I will take with me is definitely more knowledge about studio photography, especially after taking photos of all of the instruments. It was my first time shooting in an as professional as we could get set up, but I learned a lot about photography techniques with special thanks to Eric Barstow for helping me get started. I really enjoyed these past 6 weeks, and even though the work was monotonous at times, it is immensely satisfying to look at the work we've done, and I will cherish all of the memories my teammates and I made during our time together.
I think being a musician and just being generally interested and excited about music in a lot of different ways, I came into this project with a lot of big ideas and interests about thinking about, the inherent storytelling capabilities of music and instruments as a somewhat universal aspect of frameworks of life and interaction and all those sorts of things. But I think the most interesting, rewarding part of this project was fusing my specific interests and things I was excited to get into like a comprehensive product with all these other people who had their own abilities and approaches, and making something that's hopefully useful and exciting to other people in different ways. And I think being able to fuse all this disparate, sometimes daunting amount of information into something good and engaging, I think it was just a very rewarding process. And it was great.
First off, I want to give a huge thank you to our grad mentor, Hannah, for just being awesome, and Dr. Giles for also being awesome and just granting me this opportunity to work on the project. But in terms of takeaways and what I've learned, I didn't expect the collection and my time in it to affect me the way that it did. I think that I gained a lot of new ways of thinking about music making and sound, and the very valid stories associated with those various forms of music making. And I was attempting to give them all equal weight, and for the things that I knew the least about, to explore those the most, which kind of wraps into my last thing I learned was it was really special to meet people with similar interests and to learn from them, especially things that I did not know that much about.
So for me, I'm really into storytelling. And I looked at this project as a way for me to tell the stories of different instruments. But what I didn't expect was just how many of those instruments I'd never seen or heard of before. And it really opened up my perspective. Regarding those instruments, the research was really intense, and we had to mine through some pretty obscure texts and websites to find everything we could about these instruments that I'd never, been experienced with. We had to be willing to sit down and do that work to achieve the goals we set, and we were able to figure that out. But it wasn't just all that. It was really fun to be able to play on really old pianos, curate an entire museum, and build a bond with my teammates as we made something really special. I'm not just going to remember the great end product we came up with, but how much we put into it and how much it really put back into us. So here's an overview of our website. Here's the home page right here. We have our mission statement, description, images, and our content. So here's the interviews page real quick. We did 3 interviews with various members of the Duke Music Collection's background. And we have all the collections listed out here with descriptions. Here's the Dehen collection, some images, and the Eddy collection, what started it all. And we have some archive posts as well, but then the real meat of this is when it comes to the instruments. So here's one of the more remarkable instruments in the collection: the Clementi Grand piano from London. It's been played on by a variety of people, including us students, as well as various performers in formal settings. And the background research we have on it is extensive. Here's some images as well. And at the end of each, we have sources for all the images and information that we collected. So that is a brief overview of our website.